So it really was, if you think about it, not that too long ago, we had obviously the coalition between, of course, the Lib Dem and Conservative government, and then after that, people tend to forget that Theresa May's government was also a coalition government as well. Um, they coalitioned with the DUP. The DUP said, we will prop you up," and of course, well, we all saw how that very much ended. So we have had in this country, in very recent memory, of course, um, the idea of coalition governments. They're not new, but any coalition government, the parties need to support it. And you saw, and you know what I was talking about, what I'm talking about. If you followed sort of the last election, you saw hundreds of thousands of people basically saying we need to engage in tactical voting for XYZ reasons. And I saw it again next door, again, just in the county next to mine in Wakefield, basically saying, look, what needs to happen here is you need to vote for Lib Dems, because somehow the Lib Dems, who have always come in third in Wakefield, are somehow going to come first over the Labour and the Conservatives. Of course, that didn't end up happening. And again, I remember going to the old post office, and I remember people saying, "Oh, I voted, Lib Dem," and then the Labour MP who literally lost came into a round of cheers and applause, where people who had literally not voted for her were cheering and applauding her. So any actual session for tactical voting or anything like that does need official party backing. It can't happen, unofficially. We've seen what happens. I often wonder what. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you can find out the figures for this. The votes of increase in like areas where Lib Dems, maybe came third or second, their increase of what they would have been, and how people sort of changed their votes to them. Again, it's all questions up in the air, but at the end of the day, it does come down to party leadership and them doing it. And I think there is now an increase we are seeing across abroad in the continent. We've got Germany, who has a three-way coalition. There is a coalition forming against Viktor Orban in Israel. You've got a coalition of left, right, and Palestinian parties. So coalitions around the world are forming to oust, very sort of right-wing authoritarian leadership and just right-wing people in general. Can this be replicated in Britain? Yes, it can, but it needs the parties to get behind it. And I don't think the parties are there at the moment. I do not think there is the political will, either in the Lib Dems or the Labour Party, to do that. So, but I, of course, again, often remain, optimistic. And of course, we have to ask that question: why can they not put their differences aside to essentially win a victory? Boris Johnson has a massive Conservative majority, but he doesn't seem to act like it at times. But again, we'll have to see how obviously that plays out. Trouble maybe is coming quicker for Boris Johnson can maybe handle soon, especially with the Christmas period fast approaching, with warnings of course, no turkeys, no booze this Christmas. Those could come as very, very disgruntled, shall we say, people for this winter, as well as, of course, the energy crisis as well as winter. And of course, it doesn't look like this is going to be a warm winter at all. So let's jump into this article then. So this comes from The Guardian with the title of "If opposition parties abroad can put aside their differences, then why can't David, Starmer and co?" The uniting of the opposition in 2023 was a moment of optimism, built out of despair. Labour, the Lib Dems, the Green, the Welsh Nationalists resolved to do whatever it took to drive out Boris Johnson from power, under the slogan, "Just get rid of them." They overcame an electoral system that had delivered a majority of over 80 to the Conservatives on a 43% vote. of the vote in 2019 and could do so again. In Turkey, Hungary, and Israel, opposition parties have shown that protecting democracy from strongman leaders was far more important than the ideological divisions. The UK centre-left did not want this country to become a one-party state either, and decided to put aside just one opposition candidate against the Tories in each seat. Such thoughts are fantasies, of course, today. Suggest opposition parties work together to try and stop this stagnant autocratic conservative regime, was stretching all the way back to 2010 and to 2018 and beyond. And they were harumphing, commentators will wag their fingers. To claim that there is an anti-conservative majority out there because 57% of the electorate did not vote Tory is very tedious. They say, one could easily say that there was a 68% anti-Labour majority back in 2019 election because only 32% of them voted for Jeremy Corbyn. Evidence of this was going back to the 1980s that show many who vote for the Liberal, if forced to choose, would prefer the Conservatives to Labour. Progressive alliances are unsporting and very un-British, yet they continue. Voters would very easily smell a stitch-up in any case. And what would a coalition of opposition parties do about the Scottish nationalists? The SNP has every interest in keeping Johnson in power because he drives Scottish voters into their arms. It does not want a better UK, but for Scotland to leave the UK. The attempt at these arguments were very true in 2019, but the liberal left think tank Best for Britain is making a new persuasive case to opposition leaders that they are now true. It used the most accurate available polling methods to show and test how an electoral pact would work in every English constituency. It found that if their preferred party did not stand, 41% of Lib Dem voters would back Labour, with 19% saying that they would vote Tory. Similar, Labour supporters were almost twice as likely to vote for Lib Dems, with 40% of the Conservatives, and about 25%, 1/3 of Labour and Liberal Democrat supporters would transfer their vote to the Green Party, which supports the conclusion that a unity candidate could beat the Conservatives in many marginal seats. These findings should not only surprise those who haven't been paying attention. Polling earlier this year found that 2/3 of voters believe that parties broadly agree with each other and should cooperate in elections. Who knew? Meanwhile, 60% of voters do not know who came second in their constituency. They need politicians to show leadership by offering them a unity candidate rather than assuming that they can work out how to vote tactically themselves. For the notion that the British would actually reject a pact is unsporting, of course. Nigel Farage stood down candidates in Tory-held seats back in 2019 and will very doubtless do the same in 2023 or even 2024 if he revives his movement. The centre-right plays the electoral system by operating as a united bloc to the advantage of the Tory party. And I can find no reason why the centre-left could not follow suit, unless it subconsciously wants to lose, which, judging by its behaviour, is possibly you should never also dismiss as well. I agree with that very much. Alliances, of course, are springing up everywhere in reactions to democratic emergencies. Yuval Kozak, the former Turkish ambassador to London and a leader of the Republican Party, Party, summed up the spirit of opposition solidarity when he told me the true driving line in modern politics was not between the left and the right, but Democrats and autocrats. 6 opposition parties are now cooperating to oppose the recap Tayyip Erdogan as the mechanic of Turkish leadership wrecks the economy. Nutters in the judiciary and keeps thousands of political prisoners in jail. The struggle to stop Benjamin Netanyahu has produced a coalition government in Israel that upends everything you thought you knew about the Middle East. The Islamicist Arab list of cooperatives with the Jewish ultranationalist Yalma, or the Right Wards Party, fear of Netanyahu's return keeps the desperate parties on the right and the left together. And in Hungary, the united opposition against Viktor Orban's corrupt control of the state and media runs from the Greens and the Socialists through the former neo-Nazi Jagob Party, which is now a Hungarian version of UKIP. Your enemy's enemy is your friend. And when the future of democracy as a system is, especially when the future of the democratic system is in balance. A united left state here would not have to struggle to cover a gaping ideological divide. It cannot include the SNP, so be it. If it cannot include the SNP, so be it. The bias of the first past the post benefits the Scottish as well as the Brexit nationalists, and the cooperation between Labour and the Lib Dems could stop a repeat of the SNP winning 48 out of the 54 Scottish seats in 2019 with just 45% of the vote. Caroline Lucas of the Green Party favours a very anti-Tory front. We are out of time on global warming, she says. We do not have the luxury of including tribalism in another election cycle. The Lib Dem Lara Moran also says that opposition parties must work together against a very nativist government that is attacking the rights and trashing our reputation abroad and has cost the lives of thousands of mismanagement during this pandemic. Most of the Labour and Lib Democrat leaders, of course, remain cautious about this. Naomi Smith, the Best for Britain CEO, is trying to help them help themselves. She has identified at least 25 seats where the Lib Dems or Greens could win if Labour gave them a free run and accepted proportional representation as part of the deal. In return, the Lib Dems and Greens would stand down in over 150 seats, which strikes me as a very decent offer. In all likelihood, the narcissism and the small differences of the conservatism and the British left centre will prevent cooperation. But before politics and the supporters reject it, we should ask the old question. If not now, when? Will they change their minds and accept that a radical realignment is needed after the Conservatives' fifth election victory in 2023 or even 2024, or a sixth in maybe 2028 or even 2029? How much longer will they be able to say that they oppose the Tories without doing what needs to be done to eject them from power? I think that speaks really the truth to the argument where we are. I have said before, I would be very much in favour of a coalition idea of doing stuff like this. I think it would be a good way to get them out, but it's got to be party led. And good on for Best for Britain for producing this as well, and producing what is, to be honest, a very fair way to go about it. And he does make a good point about the SNP, even though I know a lot of SNP people would really disagree there. I'm probably going to get a few comments about that as well. We always do. But yeah, that is all to the most true of the point. I think it's what is really the best for the UK. It really is to get the Tories out. That's the only way we will be able to see proper change and make real change. And I think getting that proportional representation change is good. I think we saw that big push for that at the Labour conference, and I do think next time at Labour conference you will see that pushed again. And I think next time the unions will not be able to stand in the way, because I think there's going to be a big outcry, I think, from a lot of union memberships this year to say if that comes up for support again, you need to push for it, because now they have shown just how popular that is as a policy position. All the supporters for, again, changing the electoral system will push for it again. I always say this, back in the day when this was first being pushed, the idea of you'll never get more than 80. They had over 200 local Labour parties push for this and agree for this, that this should be brought to the National Convention and voted on as a policy position. It will be done so at the next one, and the next one, and the next one after that, until eventually it hits through that, yeah, this is what people want. Because I've said it's not just changing the proportional representation in Parliament as well. It's also about reforming the House of Lords as well to proportional representation system, making that a house of regional representation. Will we see it done? Again, it's all part of the drive and all part of the big drive. And I'm very surprised at the moment. The scandal, of course, is slightly touching the Lords very briefly. Hasn't done so yet, but I think if the scandal of scandals is to break, it'll be about the House of Lords. not a Conservative MP. And we'll have to see again how all this plays out. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and our affiliation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.